This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
Welcome back, everyone. We're going to talk about something today that many of us learned in middle school. Seventh or eighth grade, and they would talk about the nervous system. And then go into a little bit of detail. You kind of knew it was important, but not really sure exactly what it does. So much more important than we realize in our lives. It's kind of everything that pilots us. We're going to dig into that, and that's with an eye on what she does, and that is helping hypermobile women with chronic neck, back, and shoulder pain. And she opened our eyes up to this a few weeks ago of what this hypermobility is with women in that condition, and what many women are dealing with. And that's why she came up with the Hyper Strong method. Natalie Pendergrass is back with us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, Steve?
Fantastic. It's good to have you back here. Why don't we, even before we dig into the nervous system, just as a recap, hypermobile in women, what exactly is that again?
Hypermobility generally is talking about the range of motion for joints. You know, that the joints are moving further than they normally should, even when standing still. Most people, when they stand still, they're actually still. When somebody's hypermobile, their joints still have a little bit of shiftiness to them. So that in itself kind of throws off their nervous system. But yeah, their body just doesn't have the stability in the joints that a normal, typical body does. And so they can cause widespread pain and other issues, from digestive issues to allergic issues and so many things.
Wow. I want to put a microscope on that, because that, for me, is kind of an eye opener there. So, two people are standing still. They're just, maybe they're out at a restaurant, and there's a live band playing. One is standing, next to a table. The other, they're both right there. The hypermobile individual, are you saying that because of the way their joints are, et cetera, they're not really standing still? They're actually moving very ever so slightly?
Yeah. And so what that means is their muscles constantly have to work. Like, again, when you stand still, or I'm assuming you don't have hypermobility, again, your muscles are just kind of holding one set position, and the ligaments in your joints are holding your skeleton stable. Well, with somebody who's hypermobile, our ligaments that are supposed to hold our bones, one to the next and keep them in place, are too long and lax, so it allows some slack and shift to our bones. So even when we are standing with 2 feet on the ground, it's almost similar to like what you might do if you're trying to do tree pose in yoga and you're trying to balance yourself. It's like even with 2 feet on the ground, we're still trying to balance ourselves and keep ourselves steady. So our muscles are working at a microscopic level, constantly contracting and relaxing to keep the body relatively still, what appears to be still.
Wow. So now let's go to the nervous system. It's my understanding that the nervous system is always watching, wants to keep you safe. It's on guard, even to the fact that, put the hypermobility over to the side, that I've heard that when you breathe through your mouth, like let's say, let's say you're even being intentional about breath work, breathing, so important. You can relax your nervous system. But if you exhale through your mouth, maybe even inhale, I'm not 100% sure, you're sending a signal that to your nervous system that we might have a problem here, ever so slightly. Because let's face it, if you were running from something, let's say a rabid dog, or back in the day, a pterodactyl, or whatever it may be, how are you going to be breathing? It's going to be through your mouth. So that's sending us just a little signal. We might have something going on here, nervous system. Just keeping an eye on this. Now you have the hypermobility thing, where now your muscles are firing nonstop. I can't imagine what that's doing to the nervous system. Tell us more.
Yeah, so that does put the nervous system even more on edge, like you were saying. The nervous system will take that as a sense of a lack of safety. because if you can't just settle and be still, that's why a lot of hypermobile people will find themselves like laying in bed is one of their favorite things to do because it's the only time they feel they can really relax. Like you and many people, you can sit down on the couch and feel relaxed. Like I even just to start this, folded my legs up in a pretzel here in my office chair because that helps me to feel more relaxed. It puts a little more tension on my joints. And so therefore my nervous system can calm a little bit more. And anybody who's hypermobile will relate to that, though that is one of the things that you might look at in your past or your everyday life. It's just how you sit to have an idea if you're hypermobile. Somebody who is not hypermobile easily sits with 2 feet on the floor. Maybe they cross a leg. Somebody who's hypermobile, when they sit down, are more likely to pull their feet up onto the couch too, fold them up into like a pretzel or wrap themselves up, which initially feels good. It feels calming and soothing the nervous system because again, what it's doing is putting finally some stretch on those ligaments that normally don't have any. So again, when I'm standing straight, like say my femur to my tibia, the leg bones won't have any stretch on that ligament. So my nervous system is like, I'm not sure how you're positioned, what's happening with these bones, why are you wobbly? And it adds that stress. But when I sit down, if I fold my legs into, like crisscross applesauce, if you will, then there's finally some stretch on my ligaments and my nervous system goes, oh, I get it. You're still now, you're in this position, you're okay. The problem with that though is sit here for 15, 20 minutes, and then the muscles start going, oh, that doesn't feel so good. So I gotta unwrap that pretzel and refold into a new pretzel. And so hypermobile people not only sit in pretzel forms often, but they'll find that it then causes them discomfort and they have to constantly shift and fidget and change their position often. It's really hard to just get comfortable and relaxed. And I know I mentioned that a lot of hypermobile people will find like bed is the best place, but the sad part is oftentimes in bed is where we also get injured. I mean, I used to dislocate ribs just from sleeping.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
And I knew that was coming with the crisscross applesauce. That's the comfort from the hypermobile. I was just waiting for you to say that now your joints and your bones, your muscle, everything is saying, whoa, okay, we've in a position too long. We got to do something here.
Yeah.
Wow. So you're always hyper vigilant. It seems, changing position, moving things around. The sleep thing, that's a big eye opener. So what's going on there? Like, okay, so you're sleeping, but you're not really sleeping. It seems like you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for myself, different people get into different levels of sleep. I, even as a child, trained myself I basically trained myself to wake up every time that I changed position because I realized, my favorite sleep position, and it is for many kids and even some adults, I don't understand how they still do it, but to sleep on your stomach and then, of course, your head is turned to the side. And it's because of nervous system regulation. When we are laying face down, our nervous system says, okay, all of my vital organs are protected and I'm more secure this way. So that's why the body naturally wants to curl up or lay face down. However, if your neck is already tense, which mine was even as a child due to the hypermobility and also unfortunately child abuse, so my neck had a lot of tension. And if I woke up, after sleeping on my stomach, my head to the side, I would be in tremendous pain. So I had to make sure I stopped doing that. And so every time, even now as an adult, for, the past many decades, as soon as I wake up just a little bit to change position, I'm like, okay, shift this pillow here, move this pillow here, get in this position. This is safe, because so many positions are unsafe. I mean, even though I am really good about that, like just Sunday night, I fell asleep with my elbow bent on my right arm and unfortunately had to deal with about 90 minutes of an aching forearm because I can't sleep with my elbow bent or my forearm will just ache and ache for, an hour or so.
I can't imagine. Like even you wake up in the middle of the night to change position, you're half asleep. You know what I'm saying. You wake up, you're awake, but you're not really awake. But your brain and maybe your nervous system, from living with this condition, knows what it needs to do. So like you're thinking to yourself, even though you have sleep, all right, yeah, I got to move, but I got to be careful. You're always thinking. You're always
Yeah.
it's like you're always awake in a way.
Yeah,
Mm.
and it is very frustrating and can get really difficult because, again, going back to that, like we all tend to want to curl up. A lot of people start to realize their stomach isn't safe, so they'll go to side sleeping, which is the next best thing. But when a lot of people side sleep, they really go into this curled fetal position, which only exacerbates the issue. And so what I found is, yeah, even for me in sleeping, like we tend to want to like kind of bow our chin toward our chest. And so, yeah, I even, go to my side and I'm like, okay, lengthen through the crown, make sure my chin is tucked, and then relax there. Don't curl because it'll just cause more neck issues when we wake up. Because part of that is it's the nervous system. And like you said, it's really hard to relax and get a really restful night of sleep when you're always on that edge of slight wakefulness to make sure that, you're in a good position. But on top of that, we're also dealing with, our connective tissue is what this all comes down to is we have faulty connective tissue. And our connective tissue is prevalent throughout the entire body from blood vessels, fascia, our
Mm.
organs, it's our skin, it's what holds us in place, it's everything. And our fascia in particular, if you've ever made Jello, I don't remember if we talked about Jello before. I don't think we've had the Jello talk. I love
No.
talking about Jello with my clients because it helps people to really understand their bodies. So if you've ever made Jello, you get out that box of the powder and you put it into a bowl. And have you made Jello yourself before?
Of course, sure.
Okay. And so what temperature water do you add?
If I remember, it's been a long time, but it's hot water.
Yeah, exactly. And that's because heat makes the gelatin liquid. And so that gelatin, when you look at the actual ingredients, the main thing that it's made of is collagen. So again, connective to collagen in hypermobile body is faulty, and that is the biggest component of our fascia. So that's why we get that correlation between Jello and our bodies, is that gelatin that we're making acts very much like the fascia in our bodies. So yeah, we add hot water. It's liquid-like. It can do whatever you want. It's liquid. You can put it in whatever mold you want. So that's kind of like you go to the gym, you get yourself really warm, and you feel like, oh, I can move, I can stretch. We can always stretch better after we're warmed. And that's again because we heated up our fascia, we heated up our tendons, ligaments, everything moves better. But now you may have had a good workout, and then you go and you sit on the couch for 20, 30 minutes, and you go to get up, and it's like, ooh, I'm a little stuck, I'm a little stiff. And after, 4, 5, 6 steps, it's like, okay, starting to get a little looser, starting to get a little warmer. I can move better now. So what you did is it's kind of like you just poured your gelatin into a mold and sat it in the fridge. And that mold is the shape of your chair. And that same thing happens to a hypermobile person when they go to bed at night. So instead of going to the shape of a chair, they go into maybe that fetal position and then go to get up in the morning. And it's like, oh, it's hard to get out of that fetal position because they cooled their jello mold in that shape. And so that's why sleep position is so important because whatever position you're in for hours, you are creating that mold for your body for the next day.
Whoa. I'm guessing the heating pad is one of your friends.
Yeah, I do like to use a heating pad, but actually not extensively because, like you said, with the nervous system stuff and the age that I am at, when I wake up in the middle of the night, so to talk a little bit about hormones, it's funny, I was visiting my doctor and I'm like, I shouldn't be getting hot flashes anymore, but I still am. She looks at my blood work and she's like, yeah, I'm not even technically in menopause. My estrogen is so high, I shouldn't be getting hot flashes. She's pretty sure it's just nervous system regulation. And I'm like, I'm generally a very calm, peaceful person. However, that nervous system regulation comes into play when I do have to stay slightly awake, if you will, when I go to turn and move. So almost always, as soon as I wake up and I change position, hot flash. So then it's like, okay, covers off so I can cool down, fan on, cool myself off. Then I get too cold, then the cover's got to go back on. Sleep is a lot of work.
Yes, it seems so. Wow. This is an eye opener here. I mean, we've talked about it previously and how you support others with this, but the sleep thing we never got into.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as if uh, you have your alarm system is always on. Your alarm system is always on if you have hypermobility, where others who don't, you put the alarm system on occasionally, like arming your alarm in your house,
Yeah.
where you put it on occasionally, now you're home in the house, you shut it off. For you, it's always on. What do I mean? The nervous system. The
Yeah.
nervous system is always on. The alarm system is always on.
Yeah.
Wow. Sleeping on your back, not a good thing?
It's a great thing if you can do it. And so, like I had mentioned early on with the sleep, most people, especially when we're young, and babies, they want to sleep on their belly. Now, of course, when we have our babies, doctors tell us don't put them on their bellies. We don't want them to have their face down and, not breathe, obviously. But as we know, if you've raised kids, that's kind of where they want to be because it's the safest, most protective position. We are protecting all of our vital organs. So when we go on our back, it's the exact opposite. And that's why it's so hard for most people to sleep flat on their back. You generally need a really regulated nervous system. You have to have a lot of peace and calm in your body, or maybe a weighted blanket. A lot of people do find that a weighted blanket helps them then lay on their back because it gives that sense of security. Now, unfortunately, my experience with a weighted blanket was that it just dislocated my ankles and caused me muscle pain when I tried to move the weighted blanket to roll over at night. So I'm not
Wow.
really able to move one to use one. And I imagine that the same is probably common for a lot of hypermobile people because just the weight of it can shift our bones out of place.
How many injuries have you suffered in your life? Countless, I'm thinking.
Oh my goodness. It is. If we wanted to talk for a moment about the current tissue tears that I have, I ruptured my left vastus lateralis, which is one of your quad muscles, a big quad muscle, and it's got a gap in it about 5 inches wide and 4 inches across. And through imaging, so I was having hip issues. I have two tears in my left labrum. I have frayed my hamstring attachments. I have a big tear in my TFL and another tear in my glute medius, all hip muscles and thigh muscles. And I only know how one of them happened, and that was in a bike accident. I tore the quad. Other than that, just life.
Wow.
I'm really not sure if they just happened somehow spontaneously, I guess.
Yeah, personally, nothing to your degree. I have like a little hip thing going on. It's been about 4 weeks. It's not a hip issue, thankfully, but it's some kind of muscle that's there. Must maybe toward. I
Yeah.
think I was doing extensions at the gym. I don't know, but it hasn't resolved, and it goes away and it comes back. Mostly when I get out of a chair, get out of bed first thing in the morning, get out of the car. It's like, and then you walk like an old man for a couple of seconds, and then all right, it's better. Um,
Hmm.
I'm bringing that
Sounds like
up.
your fascia.
Say it again.
Sounds like your fascia. Because notice how you said, it gets really stuck when you're still, and then you start moving and it loosens up. So likely, yeah, you had a little bit of an injury. And what happens is wherever we have an injury or even overuse, like somebody who's at a desk and always hunched forward, what happens is your fascia is your repair system also. Not only does it hold us together like in general from birth on, but it's also your repair system. And so when we do things that we get injured from, or again, hunched over position, our fascia comes in and lays down a stronger network, a bigger, thicker matrix of fascia. And so that's probably what happened to you. You might have had maybe a micro tear. And so your body basically says, oh, look, there's a break here in the system. We need to go and repair that. And your body can't take two muscle ends and bring them back together. What it can do is bridge that with a network of more fascia. And so the fascia gets thicker. And that's what you're experiencing is because you have extra thick fascia there, extra density to it. When you're still for a while and you go to move, you're feeling how it's thick, it's cold, it's hard. You get moving, it gets lubricated, gets stretched out a bit, and then you can move a little bit better. And so that's something that, yeah, people with hypermobility experience a lot because, it's really hard to strengthen in a hypermobile body and not injure yourself. And so, you try or you don't try. Either way, fascia is coming in and basically laying down stronger networks to hold you together. Like I think I had mentioned I'd been in multiple car accidents. I had several whiplashes, and because of that, the head is kind of thrown forward and back. Fascia just gets laid down. It's like, oh, you need something stronger here to hold you together because our whole body's purpose is to stay alive and stay alive in the most efficient way possible. And just by being, your body can't make stronger muscles, but it can make more layers of fascia. And so, yeah, it sounds like you might be dealing with fascia. You might want to get a massage. Maybe they could gouache off some of that tissue, break up some of the extra adhesions that are unnecessarily there, and you might notice more mobility than in your hip.
So you're thinking like a myofascial massage?
Yeah, something like that. Or again, I like to use gua sha in my sessions to do some cross fiber friction of the tissues. And just so you know, when you do receive a gua sha session, you might talk with the person before if you find somebody who does it. Different people have different perspectives. The Asian traditional way is, to make the tissue red, to create petechiae, like a bit of bruising. When it's used in massage, it's unnecessary. And I don't like using it in that way. So bruising is not necessary. What it does really, why I use the tool, is because my fingers are really blunt compared to the microscopic muscle tissues we're trying to get through. You get a thinner tool and that scrapes between them way easier. Just like if I were to put Elmer's glue over a skein of yarn and then try to pick it apart with a cucumber, that's gonna be really difficult. Now you give me a couple of butter knives, I could probably get those threads apart. You need something thinner to get in there between those smaller fibers.
Wow. This, fascia has been on my radar ever since I had like some minor surgeries and I started learning more about it. Fascinating what it does and what the body does, as you're saying, compensates. Body's pretty amazing, when you think of it as a whole. And I only brought up my hip issue because, I'm complaining about one little thing. You got times, 1,000 times 1,000 going on there, as many with hypermobility issues do. You also teach this stuff, right?
I do. I have online programs. I say programs now because I do have my 12-week, and now I also have a 3-week transformation, and I am creating also a mini course. So for people who are unfamiliar with me, they're not sure if they want to invest in the full 12 weeks, not sure what they'll get out of it. They can start with just a 1-day mini course, or maybe they want to jump into the 3-week, possibly even the 12-week. And we had talked about sleep. I also am creating a couple of other small courses like about sleep, how to sleep with a hypermobile body and not dislocate ribs and such. And a lot of what that comes down to is how you support yourself with pillows and stuff.
Wow. Learned a lot in the times we've gotten together previously. This time, whoa. I'm thinking maybe in the future we talk about gua sha, like go into detail, because I hear like many things about it. It can reduce fine lines on your face, et cetera, and everything that we're talking about here. What do you think?
Sure. And I can tell you right now, that's all because of those fine lines and wrinkles in your face are fascial adhesions. So yeah.
And I've even heard acupuncture can do that because it's stimulating the blood flow within because things aren't moving. What's your website, Natalie?
Yeah, sacredspiriteducation.com.
Amazing. Thank you for today and all the insight. I took notes. I'm not even kidding. Get some sleep. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for being here today. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.